Good evening, very warm welcome to all of you to the Zoom meeting of Thrissur Management Association. Today, many of the past presidents of the TMA is attending the program. I can see. Welcome past presidents, Shantakumar, Gunavardhanan, Vedugopal sir, and many more. Managing committee members of TMA, invited guests, students. Once again, warm welcome all of you to the TMA Zoom meeting. If we have no customers, we have no earnings. Our stomach is dependent on the customers, stomach of our customers. This is the statement by Dabawala Ullas Book, who is the president of Newtel Mumbai. This Dabawala is feeding everybody in Mumbai. He is making this statement: if we have no customers, we have no earnings. Our stomach is dependent on the stomach of our customers. That is the situation of the Dabawala in Mumbai, because many of them are coming from Pune, and along with family they are living in Mumbai. Once again, cordially welcome all of you to today's Zoom meeting on the topic economic impact of COVID-19. Today we are very fortunate to have presence of our eminent faculty, none other than our beloved Dr.V.K.Vijayakumar sir, Chief Investment Strategist of Geojit Financial Services. Now we are under the 3.0 version of the lockdown. Economic activities are getting picked up after gradual lockdown of the lifting of the lockdown. A small virus attack in a small market in Wuhan and become the epicenter of the pandemic of the world, COVID-19. It started as a health issue. Now it become the economic issue of the world over. This war against this invisible enemy, this virus, will stop only if we are able to invent the vaccine to cure this pandemic. Both governments, central as well as state government, is pushing a lot of stimulus packages to help the common man, industry, and so on. Even before COVID-19, our economy was shaking with the disruption in the aviation industry. The situation of the jet airways at that point of time was very panicked. After COVID-19, many of the sectors affected and hit very badly, like hospitality, tourism sector. It is severely hit the impact of this COVID-19. If this lockdown is continuing for further, the tourism sector will limp further. The global oil prices nosediving. It may impact the economy of the Middle East. It will turn impact the Kerala economy also, because many of our Keralites are depending on the Middle East income. Of course, MSME sector, it is affected. Its supply chain is disrupted. They are not able to procure the material. They are not able to transit the goods and so on. It was automobile sector. 31st March is the deadline for the conversion of Bharat 4 to Bharat 6. Already the sales of automobile sector was very low. And after COVID-19, our Kerala economy is affected by the return back of migrant laborers from Kerala. Our construction sector was picking up, but this is also affecting our economy. And from 1st April onwards, we have a small number of large banks. The merger of public sector banks has happened. And the banking sector was under stress. Banking sector, day before yesterday, they have parked around 8.42 trillion crores with the Reserve Bank of India. That means excess liquidity in the system. Either banks are not willing to give the credit or they are not able to find good borrowers. Then Franklin Templeton, the mutual fund, they have bond off many of their funds. The RBI come up with some measures for rescue the mutual fund sector. Anyway, gold prices are high now. RBI reduced their reverse repo rate. Anyway, let us see whether RBI will further come with more monetary policies like monetizing, or whether they will use their mint and all. It is sure the GDP will contract in the coming quarters. Today, we are very fortunate to have our Dr. Vijayakumar sir to dealt with this impact of this COVID-19 in the economy, whether in Kerala economy or in Indian economy and world over. Vijayakumar sir is the Chief Investment Strategist of Geojit Financial Service. Previously, he was a professor and head of the Department of Economics, Sri Krishna College, Guruvayur. He is having the postgraduate economics and PhD economics from Calicut University. As you know, Vijayakumar sir is known for his articles on economic issues, which appears regularly in print media and visual media. When you are opening TV, we can watch the feedback and appearance of Dr. Vijayakumar sir. Presently, he is the Chief Investment Strategist of Geojit Financial Services, where he speaks on the topic related to capital market, financial planning, wealth management, and so on. He's a keen observer of financial markets. Dr. Vijayakumar has presented many papers and delivered many lectures on the capital market in national and international seminars. His paper, Financial Innovation, Boons and Disasters, was judged the best paper in the international conference held at Loyola College, Chennai in January 2009. Dr. Vijayakumar sir has written 4 books in economics. He has published many textbooks for the students, for the universities, higher secondary schools, and so on. And many of our members are students of the Vijayakumar sir. He has published 210 articles and presented 12 papers in international seminars and 72 papers in national seminars. His articles appear widely in Hindu, Business Line, Economic Times, Business Standard, Financial Express, Outlook Money, Mint, Financial Chronicle, and so on. So today, Vijayakumar sir are going to give a feast of his knowledge. He will go through the length and depth of the subject. I'm sure we'll be highly enriched with this speech. Before going to Vijayakumar sir, I would like to request, in case you have any questions.
And HCL Tech, the 4 top companies directly employ 10 lakh people. So if more than 90% of them are working, that is really good news, positive news. Also, we are interacting now through this webinar thanks to the technology. This would not have been possible a few decades back. Therefore, let us hope that science and technology will find a solution to this pandemic, and we will limp back to normalcy very soon. Friends, one word that is very frequently used these days in relation to this pandemic and the economic crisis is unprecedented. Everyone is using the word unprecedented. Unprecedented economic catastrophe, global crisis. Yes, it is unprecedented. All the major economic crises in recent times have been caused by a financial or economic issue, whether it is the 2008 global financial crisis and the Great Recession that followed, or the recession caused by the tech bubble burst of 2000, or the Asian currency crisis of 1997, or The stagflation caused by the oil shock of 1973-74, going back to the Great Depression of 1930s, all economic recessions, acute crises have been caused by economic and financial reasons. This is the first crisis in modern times caused by a public health crisis, and that is why it is unprecedented. And since it is unprecedented, there's a lot of uncertainty associated with that. The uncertainty and unpredictability associated with this crisis is very profound. If an economic crisis, a recession, or a massive macroeconomic shock is caused by an economic or financial reason, we can quantify to a large extent. Economists and experts can quantify the damage. We can say what will be the consequences, when the economy will recur, what should be the monetary response, what should be the fiscal response, what should be the extent of monetary and fiscal response. All this can be to a large extent quantified and clearly projected. But now we are living at a time when this kind of projection or prediction is almost impossible. A few days back, the legendary Warren Buffett, the greatest investor in history, perhaps, undoubtedly the greatest investor living at present, he was asked, what will be the impact of this crisis on the American economy? And he did not have any hesitation to say, I don't know. So all experts are bewildered, confused, from virologists to economists. Everyone is confused. The clarity or confidence is not there. Those who are making some projections are making those projections based on some. For instance, the IMF has projections for the global economies for this year and the next year. The IMF has come out with these projections based on some assumptions. For the first time in IMF's history, they have used a variable from virologists to project the economic growth for 2020 and 21. The IMF has an economic growth model, a mathematical model which they use for projecting growth. And for the first time, a variable from virologists have been used to project the global economic growth for 2020 and 2021. This is a reflection of the confusing times in which we live, a complex situation. The IMF says, if we talk about the impact of the crisis on the global economy, according to the IMF, the global economy will contract by 3% this year. In January, before the crisis, the IMF's projection was 3.3% expansion. From 3.3% expansion, now their projection is 3% contraction. That is a 6.3% revision downwards. This also is unprecedented. But the IMF says that in 2021, global economic growth can bounce back to 5.8%. This is possible because of the low base of 2020. 5.8% growth is possible based on their assumptions. And for India, their projection for this year is 1.9%. That is for a fiscal 2021, not for the calendar year. For calendar year, it is only 0.5%. Now, the assumption of the IMF is based on the conviction that this is the input provided by the virologists also, that the virus will peak by the end of May. It will persist for a few more months to come. There is no doubt about that. And the final solution, as we all know, will come only from a vaccine, which is several months away. That's an optimistic scenario. Or through a sort of herd immunity when the virus spreads and the society acquires their herd immunity. So we have to live with the virus. So they have assumed that the peak will be reached by the end of May or early June. And by June, economies will be opened up in stages and economies will limp back, not bounce back, limp back to normalcy. So this is the projection. Now, as I told you, this projection is based on this assumption. And if this assumption, there are pessimists who believe that this assumption also can be unrealistic, because there are some people who say that there will be a second wave. There can be a second wave. If there is a second wave, then things are going to get very bad. Let's hope it will not happen. Now, coming to the impact on the economy, the Indian economy, of course, I don't have to tell you about the impact as businessmen, as consultants, as experts, as professionals. Perhaps you are feeling it much more than I know, as people on the ground in doing business. You know that that the situation is very bad. In fact, there are only a very few sectors which have not been impacted. The demand destruction is going to be so huge. There will be demand destruction all over for most commodities, except a few. I will come to that. Some segments, particularly like travel, transportation, hospitality, has been battered, and that is very severe. They will take a long time to recover, and they will need a lot of help from the government also. But there are certain segments where the impact is much less. I refer to the IT industry, where there is work from home and work is progressing, and many of them are very optimistic. So this is one segment which will be relatively, I would say, completely unaffected, but relatively unaffected. One segment which is doing extremely well is the healthcare, pharmaceuticals, generally the healthcare segment. And India did very well last year with exports of $20.5 billion. As the Prime Minister said recently, India has emerged as the pharmacy of the world. The competence and the capability of India's pharmaceutical companies in supplying drugs globally. We are exporting to 170 countries of the world. So that industry is doing well. They are operating. Single company produced 12 crores of hydroxychloroquine tablets last month. So that is one industry which is doing well, and rupee depreciation is helping in their exports. So and the good performance of this segment is reflected in the stock price also. The stock market has gone down, pharmaceutical index has gone up, and some stocks, the price appreciation has been very, very impressive, 30%, 35%, even 40%. And one industry which has gained out of this is the telecom industry, because work from home means explosive increase in the consumption of data, and therefore, and this is likely to persist for an extended period of time. And that's the reason why, if you look at the stock prices of telecom companies, Reliance and Bharti Telecom in particular, Reliance, of course, great things are happening. I'm not going into specific company details now. This segment is a major gainer from this crisis because of, during all crises, there will be some gainers. I just shared this sectoral analysis. You must be already knowing this, just to give you an idea about that. FMCG is, of course, did very, very well last month because people have been buying and stocking. But then when with the kind of unemployment that we have, with the kind of decline in income that we have, 85% of our people get their daily income by daily work. Only 15% work in the organized sector and are assured of their monthly income. So with this kind of massive unemployment and the destruction of demand, even the FMCG sector will be facing the heat in the coming months. So this is the broad sectoral impact. And of course, financials will be one segment which will be impacted both positively and negatively. If you look at the stock prices of small banks, not the large banks like HDFC, which are in a class by themselves, But then large number of banks which are smaller in size, the stock prices have declined by 50%, 60%, even more than that. The market is discounting an increase in non-performing assets, and these segments will be under distress. But the big names will gain out of this because a lot of money is available cheap, not just from the RBI, from the deposits also a lot of money is available. So if they can find clients, good quality clients to whom they can lend, there is big money to be made. So the impact on the financials will be company specific. There will be also segments like gold loan finance, for instance, where the business will be very good, because when there is a high distress in the economy, normally there's a positive correlation between distress and the gold loan growth. So from the rural side, so that will be positive. So that is about the brief sectoral analysis. Coming to the response, again, I'm not going to the details because all of you are familiar with the fiscal response already implemented by the government, the monetary response from the RBI, the LTRO1, the LTRO2, the massive cut in repo rate, and the higher proportionate cut in reverse repo rate, the moral suasion by the central bank, nudging commercial banks to lend more. But banks are not lending more because banks have to protect the interests of their depositors. We can understand that. After the 2008 financial crisis, when the banks were sitting on a lot of money and the central banks were nudging the commercial banks to lend, they went the extra mile and started lending massively. And we know what happened to those lendings. So once bitten, twice shy, commercial banks are now extremely reluctant. So unless the government steps in with some sort of credit guarantees, the details are being worked out. Then monetary transmission, in spite of the rate cut by the RBI, monetary transmission will not be as expected. Well, I wrote an article in Economic Times yesterday saying the title of the article, I sent it to some of you. The title of the article is, "In a crippling economy, relief delayed is relief denied." Particularly the business segments, the MSMEs. We know MSMEs are the backbone of the economy from the perspective of employment and income generation. We have an estimated 65 million MSMEs in India, employing 11 crore people. And these MSMEs account for 33% of our national product and 40% of our exports. So we can understand the significance of MSMEs. And what are the MSMEs? What is the state of MSMEs now? We have been talking about, of course, we have given food to the people. Fortunately, India is sitting on 77 million tons of food grains. That is one very big positive. This is 3 times what we need as buffer stock. So, and the government is giving free food grains, free pulses. That is good, because we can ensure not just the government, and a lot of NGOs are doing great work. So we are ensuring as much as possible that no one goes hungry. But there is one hunger which is not being addressed, and that is the hunger for credit by MSMEs. The small business have been asked by the government not to retrench. In my opinion, that is unsustainable. If your cash flow is zero, and if you cannot retrench, nobody likes to retrench. All of us would like to help and increase employment as much as possible. But if you are having zero cash flow, and if you are asked to meet all your fixed costs, including employee costs, well, you can sustain it for a small period of time, but not an extended period of time. Business will go bankrupt. So the government will have to step in and provide a timely relief. We say justice delayed is justice denied. Like that, the relief delayed also is relief denied. So we are told that the government is working on the details. They have a big package. So the government is working on that, but then it has to come very fast. In the developed countries, the response have been quick and very fast. for obvious reasons, particularly in America, UK, Italy, France, and Spain. These 5 countries account for 70% of the mortality in the world. So naturally, their response also had to be very quick and fast. They have come with very fast and quick response. But then we must understand that there is no free lunch for emerging economies. We don't have the kind of resources with the developed economies have. Therefore, our response cannot be as huge as the response of, let us say, the US or the UK or some other developed countries like Japan. We don't have that kind of resources. We must first understand that. Complete monetization is okay, fine to an extent, but then there is no way we can expand our fiscal deficit without any concern for fiscal discipline. It will have massive economic consequences. I know there will be some questions from you on that, because some of my friends had rung me up and asked me questions specifically on that. We will come to this part in the question and answer session. There are two issues there. We cannot afford to delay the relief to the MSMEs. It has to come very fast. Otherwise, we will be doing a lot of damage. The government will have to come up with a clear picture of what will be the size of the fiscal deficit, how they are going to ensure monetary transmission, what kind of credit guarantees they are going to give to small business, and all the details. We can expect it within a few days. But we must understand that we cannot be expecting a 10% fiscal deficit, 12% of the GDP. Many people are talking about that. It's not possible because it has got its own consequences. I will come to this later. Coming specifically to our own state, Kerala, we have done an excellent job in containing the damage. Of course, India also. We know from experience that countries which had implemented the lockdown in the initial phase of the pandemic have succeeded in limiting the damage. In US, in Italy, Spain, France, and UK, they did not do that. That was the pride. Therefore, they could not flatten the curve. In India, we have flattened the curve, but many more months, a few months to come, the infections will increase. The mortality also will increase, but we must understand that locking down the economy, closing the economy is not an option at all. We have to open the economy, we have to open business. Otherwise, more people will die of starvation and hunger than due to the pandemic itself. Therefore, the government of India did a good job in implementing the lockdown at the right time. And Kerala government also has done a very good job in identifying the carriers of the virus, in isolation, in quarantine, very reasonably, very good, effective management. We should appreciate both governments for that. Of course, we can find loopholes and weaknesses in many things, but then these are extraordinarily difficult times and there are limits to what can be done. In Kerala, I'm basically, as you all know, I'm an optimist, an incorrigible optimist. But when it comes to Kerala, one has to be realistic also. The optimist in me thinks and feels that things will come back to normalcy very soon. But the realist in me tells me that Kerala is going to face a very, I won't use the word dismal, but very difficult few years going forward. The reason why I say this is, as you all know, Kerala has been driven by the remittances during the last 4 decades. Last 4 decades, the Kerala economy has been driven by remittances. And the remittances account for around 35% of the size of the Kerala economy, the size of the what we call the not the state domestic product, because the state domestic product does not include the remittances from abroad. There are technical details regarding that. And these remittances have been driving consumption in India, have been driving in Kerala, have been driving consumption, all sorts of consumption, luxury consumption, consumption of comforts, even the construction of apartments. Apartments have become an investment product in Kerala. We know lakhs and lakhs of apartments are lying vacant. There are no people living there because people have made investments into these apartments, not for living, as an investment. So all these have been driven by remittances, and this remittances, even if things come back to normalcy, remittances are not going to be as strong as they used to be. And also, even when remittances come, assuming that things come back to normalcy and people, Keralites migrate back to Middle East, well, the money is not going to be spent the way it was spent previously. In economics, we talk about propensity to consume, the marginal propensity to consume. The marginal propensity to consume has been very high in Kerala because of this remittances. Going forward, marginal propensity to consume will decline, and people will be spending less money on mainly on the luxuries of life, on conspicuous consumption. In a way, that is good, but then that is going to impact business. The aggregate demand will be impacted. And also in Kerala, our public finances are in very bad shape. In fact, all the states are finding it very difficult. In fact, the situation now in India is such that we have balance sheet issues at 3 levels or 4 levels. The central government finances are in bad shape because your expenditure is increasing. The GDP might even contract this year. Therefore, the fiscal deficit will go for a toss. Government's revenue, it's not normal decline in revenue, it is complete collapse in revenue. So the center finances are in bad shape, state finances are in terrible shape, business balance sheets are, with the exception of some companies with big corporates with large cash balances, the balance sheets are looking bad. Even households, many households are over leveraged. So in that situation, in Kerala, it is particularly so because Kerala last I would say more than 15 years, we have been spending more than what we have been earning. Public finances are terrible. This has to change. Major part of the revenue of the Kerala government, including the revenue that we get from the devolution of resources from the center to states, major part is going towards the payment of salaries to the government employees, pension to retirees, and the interest on borrowed money. This is a larger proportion compared to other states, and that is why we have been breaching the deficit target for continuously. Our finance minister during the VS government, I reread all his budgets recently. In all the 5 years, he has been criticizing the central government, the UPA2, for not allowing Kerala government to borrow more. So if the UPA2 government under Manmohan Singh had allowed Kerala government to borrow more as demanded by our finance minister during the VS government's regime, Kerala's situation would have been terrible, but then that did not happen. But then now the situation is looking very stark. I am a person who believes that we need to rethink a complete restructuring of public finances of all the states, particularly in Kerala. We cannot afford to have a revision of the salaries and pension salaries every 5 years. We cannot afford to do that. Politicians are doing that because they have their vote bank, their constituency is the vote bank, the unions, and that is doing a lot of damage. We cannot continue with that. Therefore, a restructuring of public finances of the government are required. And also, in one way, there is a positive dimension to the crisis. We have several lakhs of Malayalis working in the Gulf, we know that, West Asia to be precise. So these are people who have acquired certain skills, who had this kind of exposure to business and to companies, very good companies. And Keralites have high level of productivity. We know our productivity is very high, particularly outside Kerala. I'm not going to that. So Malayalis coming back from West Asia with skills are human resources. If these human resources are properly employed, they can contribute substantially to the growth of the state. So we have to do a lot in ease of doing business. The attitude of the politicians have to change. The attitude of the bureaucracy have to change. It has to be pro business. It has to be openly pro-business, pro-investment. We are talking about that. But the ground reality, as we all know, is different. This is the time when things will force the society, there will be societal pressure in forcing a change. So there will be, we can hope, and organizations like ours also can exert pressure on the government to do the right thing. All the political parties should reach a consensus on easing business, on debureaucratization, and unnecessary political interference in running business. Also in Kerala, we need an attitudinal change. For many years now, we have been a little bit reluctant to do blue-collar job, the preference for white-collar jobs, blue-collar jobs only outside the state. In the Middle East, we work really hard. That will change. I believe that many of my friends have been telling me when we had discussions that this kind of an attitudinal change that you're talking about is unlikely to happen in India. But I'm a person who believes that the circumstances will force this change. Unless you change, you cannot survive. That is going to be the situation. So if we can do the kind of work that we are doing in other states and in other countries, well, we can make Kerala, if I may borrow Trump's words, great again. Trump always says, making America great again. In Kerala, we can use our human resources to make the state a very, very strong economy, a vibrant economy. It's not easy, as I said, it is not easy. In the medium term, it is going to be very tough. It is going to be very tough. The road is going to be very rough and tough. In the medium term, we will have a lot of sufferings in the medium term, but from the short to medium term, but the medium to long run, it is going to be good, not just for Kerala, for India also. One point which I did not mention, which I would mention now is, one inevitable consequence of this COVID-19 is that there will be a backlash against China. There will be an emotional backlash, a psychological backlash, and also an economic backlash led by the West. Particularly in the US, this is an election year, so Trump will be leading from the front in that. But whether it is good or bad, let me tell you, this is inevitable. Already, supply chains are starting to move from China to other countries, and countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, even Indonesia, Myanmar are doing the right thing to attract foreign investment. We can attract a lot of investment, a lot of foreign investment. We have great companies. Reliance, for instance, succeeded in getting 60,960 crores in less than 3 weeks from 3 investors, including Facebook. So India has this capability, that entrepreneurial strength, and the demographic advantage. No other country has this kind of vast human resources which India has. So we should be exploiting this emotional and economic backlash against China, which is going to come to attract investment into India so that India will benefit. So the medium-term prospects, medium to long-term prospects for both our country and our state are bright if we do the right if we take the right decisions. Already work is progressing in that area. But as I said, the short term, the road is going to be very rough and tough. Let's hope for the best. Now we can move on to the Q&A session. I don't know the answers to all the questions. You may be having a lot of questions. Sometimes I will ask some questions. We can have a discussion.
Those having questions, kindly show your hand in your participant button. You can show your hand. Okay, Pradap. Okay. Pradap.
Yes, Dr. Vijayakumar. Hello,
Yeah.
Dr. Vijayakumar. It was a nice, very educative talk. I like to ask you one simple question. That is, we had a dream of achieving 5 trillion economy. Now probably that will remain only in the dream. However, there is a silver line in the horizon. That is, so many companies may leave China and come to India for investments. What is your opinion in this respect?
Okay. Colonel Pratap is always the first person to ask questions. I have observed that.
Not necessarily. I don't think so.
Thank you very much. Good students are, as a retired professor, I know good students always jump with the question. So you are a very good student. Now, I agree with you that a lot of money will move from China to India because India has this kind of resources, human resources, and also the entrepreneurial talent. Supply chains are already shifting. But I disagree with your statement that 5 trillion economy will remain a dream. No. The initial objective was to achieve a 5 trillion economy in 2024-25. That is going to
Hello, I can't hear you. Your audio has gone off.
One minute.
some technical issue.
Please hold on.
Yes, your audio.
Yeah, Vijayakumar's audio is down now. We are rectifying that in a few minutes. Please wait.
Okay. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay now?
Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah. Yes, yes.
So did I answer your question, Pratap? I hope you listened to that. Or was it cut off in between?
I couldn't listen, half your answer. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
No, I will complete.
I
will complete that. Very briefly, I will complete that. I agree with you that this is an opportunity for India. Supply chains will be moving from China, and India will be a very good location for the supply chains and investment to come in. But don't be so pessimistic about the 5 trillion economy. Certainly, we will reach the 5 trillion economy target, 7 trillion, even 10 trillion. But the timeline will have to be expanded. We are not going to reach there in 2024-25. A couple of years will have to be extended. But certainly, we will reach the target. No doubt about that. This also will pass.
Thank you. Thank you for the pessimistic view. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions? Today we have presence of past presidents like Udavardhanan sir, IAS, CATS Anandaraman sir, immediate past president Nandai Varghese.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
you can hear.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, good evening, Vijayakumar sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Teddy here.
Yes, Teddy.
Yeah, good to see you since been 8 years.
Thank you, Teddy.
Yeah, sir, my question is, we know that the lockdown will get over maybe 1 month, 2 months, but definitely it will go over one day. And the basic demand, consumption demand will definitely come back as soon as the lockdown will get over. My question is that whether the central government is equipped to meet the demand through our supply. So how the government is going to tackle the supply constraint, which is likely to happen maybe in July and August. So what are the things? Because I'm not seeing much from the government side other than giving some sort of physical stimulus or some sort of monetary stimulus through RBI, but nothing is there coming up straight to the farmer, the entrepreneur, to just remove the supply constraints, which is likely to hit maybe in August and July and August from there onwards. The problem here is, if happens, what happens is the inflation will persist and it will surge. And we will have a situation where low growth, high inflation, which is going to be much more much more negative other than the pandemic. So this will have a long-term impact. How do you think that, how do we take over, take over this kind of issues? What the government is supposed to do in this particular situation? I'm foreseeing it in near future.
You have raised a very pertinent issue already. Well, to give you an example, 18 districts in the red zone are completely under lockdown. There has been partial lifting of business. Some industries have started production. But then CMI recently said in one of their reports that 48% of the GDP comes from these hotspots. So if you are running a business and your raw materials or the inputs are coming from the red zone, well, the supply chain gets disrupted. So it is not what the government can do. Government cannot do much in normalization of these supply chains. Supply chains will automatically get normalized if the economy is completely opened up. We have to go to the full extent of opening up the economy, of course, in stages. Then only the supply chains will get normalized. Otherwise, supply chains will not get normalized because this is a disruption which we never had in the past, right? So we will have to, even if this virus persists for, let us say, a few more months, let us say 4 months or 5 months or even 6 months, in a very pessimistic scenario, we will have to learn with the virus. That is the only solution. There will be higher infections, higher mortality, but there is no other choice. We'll have to open. And once things are open with social distancing, if production resumes, automatically supply chains will get normalized. Otherwise, as you said, if you increase the money transmission, if you give more money to the hands of the people through general accounts, whatever, and if the demand increases, and if the supply shocks persist, there can be inflation. There can be hyperinflation also, even though people say that inflation need not be bothered about now. The problem with inflation is once it reaches a particular point and crosses that limit, it becomes hyperinflation, which will become a vicious cycle and go completely out of control. Therefore, what is required is an opening of the economy gradually, stage by stage, studying the requirements of industries. Work is progressing on that. Niti Aayog is focused on that. Some experts are working on that. It will take time. And once it happens, the market mechanism will take care of that.
Okay, sir. Bye.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yes, Andrea.
Yeah. Taking from what you said just now, let me be a bit controversial. The first lockdown was absolutely fine. I thought the lockdown 2.0 and the lockdown 3.0, without any package for MSME business and all, I think that was not a very right decision. It might do overall more harm than good is what I feel. I'd like to know your views.
In fact, I completely agree with you on that, Anthony. I mean, I had forwarded an article which I wrote in Economic Times yesterday. It's the title, "When the economy is crippled, relief delayed is relief denied." So we are all a little bit perplexed why the government is taking an indefensibly long time for announcing this package. We are told that the government is actually having a gradualistic approach, because there are people who believe, a little bit pessimistically, that this virus will linger for many months to come, and if the infections explode, and now recently you might have read about that, the WHO just warning that there is a possibility of an explosive spread of the virus in Africa in the coming months. So the government has been cautioned on that, and the government is keeping the powder dry for a massive, perhaps a massive effort would be required when, I won't say things get out of control, things turned from bad to worse. I completely agree with you on this point. In fact, in my presentation, I explained that we have on an estimated 6.5 crore MSMEs employing 11 crore people, accounting for 33% of our national product, accounting for 40% of our exports. So if a timely relief is not going there, well, it is certainly not the right kind of policy. I agree with you. It's not controversial. There is no controversy regarding that. I'm in complete agreement with you. We are told that it is likely to come in the next couple of days. The next package.
Actually, Harish Salve came out with a video of about 25 minutes. He said this is a time Modi could have used to come out with very strong statements on how the country can be changed, because nobody is going to dispute him at this time. And that opportunity is getting wasted instead of being really properly used. I mean, something like that I thought maybe done by Mr. Modi at this time.
Well, that could have been done. For some reason, it was not done. Could have been done, yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? CA Shantakumar sir.
Yes, Shantakumar.
Okay, I'm Ratish. Can I ask one question, sir?
Yes.
What about the post-COVID scenario of infrastructure and real estate sector?
Well, the post-COVID scenario for the construction sector, real estate, there are different views regarding that, right? We know that there is huge demand for affordable housing in India, and that affordable housing segment will certainly do well. But regarding the segment beyond the affordable segment in not the luxury segment, something that comes in between, there is likely to be a slackening of demand. Even if, of course, if the interest rates come down further, and of course, I believe the RBI has no choice but to cut interest rates further. Even now, our interest rates are much higher compared to the interest rates in not just the rest of the world, even in emerging markets. Therefore, that can make real estate demand, can give a big boost to real estate demand, particularly affordable housing will do exceedingly well. But in India, we have a situation, Kerala, we have a situation where there is an inventory, a huge inventory. One social activist in a channel discussion said, Malayalam Adeham പറഞ്ഞത് ഇങ്ങനെയാണ്, കേരളത്തില് വീടുകളില്ലാത്ത 5 ലക്ഷം കുടുംബങ്ങളുണ്ട്, പക്ഷേ കുടുംബങ്ങളില്ലാത്ത 3 ലക്ഷം വീടുകളുണ്ട്. 3 lakh houses remaining unoccupied. So people have been buying these apartments as an investment and so when in the case of this asset bubbles, what happens is when the price of the asset goes on increasing, people will buy more and more, they will invest more and more. And if the prices stagnate, and particularly in the case of apartments and real estate like that, the rental yield is very low, well, demand will start slackening. Of course, a very low interest rate can boost demand, that also is there. I see a big increase in demand for affordable housing and the construction in those segments, but not that much other segments.
Okay, next question is from
Thank you, sir.
Kumar.
Thank you.
Hello.
Ajit Kumar.
Yeah.
You are audible. Please.
Yeah. Well, you can hear me, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Vijayakumar. It was an enthralling talk, and I hope you are keeping a good health and be safe. First, let me wish you that. I know. What I would like to tell is that we are in the midst of this pandemic. We do not know what will be the course this virus is going to take. Nobody is sure. Nobody is sure what is the course the virus is going to take. Even so, 45 days of this lockdown and is over. Now we have to open the economy slowly and steadily. But my question is, how we know this small time traders and MSMEs, they are going to pay salary to these workers? Because we have got about 15 crore monthly getting a salary employed, daily getting salary employed, they will all go under starvation because you cannot blame this industrialist or small scale traders and small scale businessmen to pay them salary because they don't have any income. They have not sold their product, so they don't get any income. So, about a few days back, there was an interview of Mr. Raghuram Rajan, the ex-RBI governor, with Congress leader Rahul Gandhi. He suggested that at least 65,000 crores should be set aside by central government as a way to pay these people through their bank, at least 7,000 rupees, something like that, to pay these people so that they can avoid starvation and also avoid most probably a riot in the streets, especially migrant workers, daytime, daily wage getting laborers, and also monthly getting monthly wage earners. So, what is your opinion about that?
Okay.
Well, very relevant thoughts. I don't think anyone will disagree with what you have said right now. Businesses can't be expected to pay salaries to their employees when they have zero cash flow. It is impossible. But the government is taking a political decision. The governments always take a political posturing because particularly in a country like India, businessmen are supposed to be very rich, fat cats who can afford to pay. We know that is not the case. Even not just forget about MSMEs, even large companies, with the exception of companies like, let us say, TCS, Infosys, HCL Tech, who are sitting on a lot of cash, and also some large companies with a very sound balance sheet. Even corporates, highly leveraged companies, corporates are in very bad shape. MSMEs are in very terrible shape. They need help. They need assistance, and that assistance has to come. In many countries, in the developed countries, government is paying 80% of the salary of the companies. Government is paying 80% of the salaries. And there is a lot of credit guarantees also announced, right? So that is the need of the hour. Without that, we are going to face very dire situation. As you said, even a social strife, people on the streets, social disharmony, tensions, which we have never experienced in India, all these are likely. So, of course, the leadership is a little bit wanting in that area. Communication, Antiraman pointed out very correctly, good communication, reassuring communication is required. That is one area where the government is a little bit wanting. But let us hope. Of course, Raghuram Rajan, not just Raghuram Rajan has been giving a balanced view, unlike many other reputed economists, because other economists, many of them very reputed, only talk about giving money to the poor people, expanding the fiscal deficit. But he always say, Raghuram Rajan always say, you also has to take care of the fiscal situation, because if the fiscal deficit balloons beyond a point, nobody will be a conservative hawk now saying that the fiscal deficit should be 3.5%, the 8%. Nobody will say that. And even most conservative economists will allow a partial monetization of the deficit also. There is no issue. But then if it goes beyond a particular point, the problem is our credit rating will come down. And if the credit rating comes down, there will be massive selling in the markets. Even remember, foreigners have invested massively, not just in these stocks of Indian companies, but also in Government of India's bonds. Recently, Standard & Poor or Moody's have downgraded not the credit rating, but the credit rating outlook of Indonesia. Actually, Indonesia has a much better macros compared to India. The macros I'm talking about. So there is a probability that these rating agencies might downgrade the credit rating, in which case the consequences, Teddy was referring to that, hyperinflation, because there will be massive capital outflow, there will be big hit on the currency, exchange rate, India's currency will crash, and that can lead to inflation and even a stagflation like scenario. So government has to act. We have been expecting the government will come out with another big package, particularly for MSMEs, but it did not come at the right time. Let's hope for the best in the coming few days.
Yes, okay. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much.
One more question from Mr. Priyan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Professor, it was an amazing speech. I've been following you for 10 years. And as usual, you are, what do you call, an unbridled optimist.
Thank you.
And that has come through again today. Two questions, Professor. Number one, yesterday, NASDAQ has become positive for the year.
Right.
With nearly 1.3 or 1.4 million infections and just short of 100,000 deaths, they hit a new high for the year. What are they talking about? I mean, what are they budgeting for? And on the other side, Indian government has just increased by nearly 50% the budgeted borrowing number. And you just mentioned that the fiscal deficit should not balloon beyond a certain level. But I think we are going to hit a nearly 5.5% fiscal deficit this year. What do these two things, which are poles apart, talk about? I mean, I'm not able to really reconcile the two. Maybe you can help us.
Well, you must have observed a major, I wouldn't say anomaly, but a major disconnect between the global financial crisis of 2008 and its impact on the stock market and the impact of COVID-19 on the stock market. In 2008, following the Lehman Brothers collapse, in India, the markets crashed from the peak by 65%. This time it is much lower. And also in the developed countries, the crash in the market was much higher in 2008 and 2009. The reason is very simple. Now, for the first time in history, we are at record low interest rates, particularly the developed countries. The central banks have been printing money and injecting this money. The Fed has been even buying junk bonds, not highly rated bonds, even junk bonds. And that is why the 10-year bond yield in the US is 0.6%. 0.6% is a 10-year bond yield. I track the 10-year bond yield in the US much more than Dow Jones or S&P or NASDAQ because it tells you a lot about the global financial system and the risk appetite. If the 10-year bond yield in the US is 0.6%, what does it mean? It means US is borrowing from the rest of the world at 0.6% for 10-year paper. This is a kind of risk aversion globally, and there is huge amount of money available. So when the rate of interest is low, naturally stock prices have to be higher, the valuations have to be higher, the price earning multiple will be higher. Now, you rightly said that NASDAQ is all-time high, but not S&P or not Russell 2000, which is the index for the smaller companies, or the Dow. The reason is NASDAQ is tech companies. And some tech companies are doing exceedingly well. For example, take Netflix. Netflix, the business is booming because people are staying at home. We don't have a Netflix in India. So when Netflix is booming, naturally it will be reflected in the stock prices. And also the tech companies are doing very well. And more importantly, as I told you, that correlation between the historically abysmally low interest rates and stock prices also are significant. So this is the reason why. And also, even in India, the stock market is performing much better than what even, not just optimists, realists expected. The reason is people are expecting a lot of foreign portfolio investment to flow into emerging markets like India at the first sign of stability. Remember, India has come out till now, I would say, unscathed from this crisis. The total mortality in India as on today is around 1,900, right? 1,900. This is less than the death in America in a single day, right? So from the mortality front and in the containment of the virus, we have done a good job. And also there are people who say that the way we manage the situation, early lockdown, the BCG injection, the malarial infections, and our high immunity to diseases, all these are responsible, but there is no consensus on that. So the market is expecting that. And the NASDAQ, this is the explanation.
Yeah, what about your opinion on the fiscal deficit number? The borrowings,
Fiscal
new numbers
deficit,
have come out now.
now, actually, for a country like India, we are always focus on the fiscal deficit of the center, 3.5, 3.3, like that. Actually, the fiscal deficit in India is more than 10%. You have to take into consideration the fiscal deficit of the center, the fiscal deficit of the state, and the borrowings by public sector undertakings like the Food Corporation of India, right? All this form what we call the PSBR, public sector borrowing requirement. If you take the public sector borrowing requirement in India, this year, ballpark average, it would be north of 10%. Certainly it will be 11% in my assessment, because when you have the denominator GDP contracting and the numerator expenditure, the deficit increasing, the deficit is very, very alarming. It will be certainly more than 10%, even before the crisis. Before the virus impact, the PSBR was 10%. So it might go even beyond 11%. That is why even Raghuram Rajan, while he's arguing for, transfer of money to the very poor people, not in small doses, in big doses, he says we need to have a package. The government will have to announce a package wherein they have to formulate a plan of action where they will come back to fiscal prudence within a short period of time. So the fiscal deficit is actually the total fiscal deficit in the country, because that fiscal deficit represents the excess of demand in the economy. That is around, that would be around 11%. That is why many people are concerned about a possible ratings downgrade from the ratings agencies.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Okay, Priyan. Now we have many more questions, but due to the paucity of time, we are going to do 3 questions more. Here we have a question from our Vice President, Engineer Vinod Manjula. It's a very important question. Professor Vijayakumar sir, can you touch upon the reason for fluctuation in dollar rates?
Okay.
Yes.
Vinod, exchange rate is a function of demand and supply. Right? And now, as I already explained in my brief analysis, we have a situation where, for the first time in history, the 10-year bond yield is at 0.6%, which I explained in very simple language is a situation where the US is borrowing from the rest of the world at 0.6% for 10-year treasury, 10-year paper, right? The reason is dollar is the reserve currency of the world, the official reserve currency of the world, decided by the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, which led to the formation of the IMF and the World Bank, right? And US is the largest economy in the world, and that is regarded as, dollar is regarded as the safest asset class in the world, whether we like it or not, that is a fact. Therefore, a lot of money is going into dollar, and demand for dollar is increasing. And that is one of the reasons why dollar is very strong. And as far as emerging markets are concerned, emerging market currencies are concerned, actually India is doing better than many other emerging markets. But when we have an economy which is not in very good shape, and things are not going to become normal in the very short run, there can be, and people are, this also I referred to very, very briefly, people are expecting also a probable credit rating downgrade, which might lead to the flight of capital. Okay. During crisis always, below, the dollar will be king.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
We can take one more question. Any question? Good order, sir. You can unmute and ask a question. Okay. Today the session was excellent. I think he is not able to connect due to technical issue. I know you will have more questions that we will discuss in next forums. Dr. Vijayakumar sir took the session in an excellent manner, like we are recollecting the college days, where the professor, how he's handled the audience, even in this Zoom. It was excellent. Before winding the session, I request Honorary Secretary Sijo to propose for tactics. Today, almost 62, 63 participants attended the Zoom meeting. Even many of our TMA members from abroad and Delhi, I think from Hyderabad. Many of them from even outstation, they have attended the program. Thank you, Vijay sir. Over to Sijo.
Thank you, friends, for the participation. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Professor. Excellent section. As always, very clear what you present. Within a short period of time, you gave the whole Indian economy and all those things. Thank you very much. But I do want to throw a question during that time. Sadly, what is happening at present in my scenario is banks are exploiting the situation, even though the RBI has reduced the interest rate. Most of the banks, what they have started doing is they have started giving additional loan with additional interest on it. I don't know why this is happening. In fact, additional interest of 1 to 1.5% is charged by most of the bankers by giving us additional facilities. That is from the private banks. And if you go to look into the government side, as you said, MSMEs and SMSEs are supposed to be supported, but very unfortunately, even the basic needs of electricity, which we in CII is requesting to give a waiver on the fixed charges. The government has just extended the period and they have started charging interest on the amount delayed. So literally most of the issues are not being addressed by the central, state, or the bankers directly. So this is a sad part actually as an industrialist and as an entrepreneur, I feel. I know it will be very difficult for everybody to answer on it. It's just a note from me. But meanwhile, I like to thank Professor for giving us an excellent section. And I like to thank Padma for bringing you to the TMA office and making you all the arrangements to give us this section. I like to thank Shobi also for sitting with you to help you with this webinar. Of course, I can't forget Sony, who's taking a lot of pain in coordinating the webinars very regularly. Thank you, President, and thank you, Professor, for the excellent section. Good day.
Thank you all for spending your precious time with the TMA. We will come again with more programs like this. Thank you. Thanks very much.